Good afternoon guys, welcome back to my garden. I'm Dominika if you're new here. Today I want to share with you my plant haul for my shady container garden. It's mostly summer flowering bulbs and perennials in the form of bare roots. So generally speaking, my garden is pretty full at this point, and it's mostly perennial because I keep stuff from year to year, but I do leave myself the possibility to try something new, something different each year. So I keep some of the containers just for seasonal plantings. So today I want to show you what I got for this season. I'm pretty excited because there's a lot of plants that I have never tried before in my garden, so they are completely new to me. So I'm excited to share that with you, and then obviously to report back to you in a couple of months, show you how they did in my garden. So let's get into it, let's get going, because I also want to plant all of this today. All right, I'm losing some bulbs here. Okay, let's start with the Dutch grown haul because I'm pretty excited about this. So one thing I wanted to say is Dutch grown used to sell only summer flowering bulbs and spring flowering bulbs, but now they also have a really nice selection of bare root perennials. And I'm a huge fan of bare root perennials because they are really a budget-friendly way to add more perennial plants to your garden. Bare root perennials are always cheaper than buying mature plants at the garden center. Oftentimes you get more than one root per bag, so for the price of one you get sometimes 3, sometimes 5. Also, oftentimes you can find a better selection of plants, wider selection of plants as bare roots than what you can maybe find at your local nursery or garden center. The only downside to growing bare root perennials is that because they come as bare roots, when you plant them in your garden, you oftentimes need to give them a season or two before they really establish and before you can fully enjoy them. So last year I had the chance to try some of the Dutch grown bare root perennials. I planted 3 plants in my garden. I had a hosta, a steel bee and anemone, and I was really impressed with the quality because those flowering perennials, a steel bee and anemone, they bloomed already in the first season, which is not always the case, as I said, with bare root perennials, but they had beautiful flowers just a couple of months after planting. The hosta also did phenomenal. This year it's growing so vigorously. It's over there. I already had to bump the size of the container. That's how beautiful and healthy it grows. So I was really impressed with the quality. So this year I am trying some new bare root perennials and new summer bulbs from them as well. So let's dive right into this. First things first, I have calla lilies. I highlighted calla lilies recently in my video about summer flowering bulbs for shade. So I got 3 calla lilies. Calla lily called Aquila, beautiful purple flowers. Well, technically they are not flowers, they are modified leaves, but let's call them flowers for now. So beautiful purple flowers, dark green leaves with white speckles on them. Calla lilies are great for partial shade. In milder climates, those leaves can actually be evergreen. Next, I have shooting star red wings. So that's a dodecatheon. I believe that's how you pronounce it. I might be wrong. It has beautiful green leaves at the base, and then it has those really tall, up to 40 centimeters tall bloom stalks with these beautiful pink flowers with reflexed petals. And it kind of looks like a shooting star. So I have a bag of 3. The only thing that I'm worried about is that these usually bloom between spring and summer, and then in summer they go dormant because they don't really like heat. That's kind of their protective mechanism, to go dormant when it gets too hot. So I garden in a very hot climate, like our summers, it can get up to 43 degrees Celsius in the shade. So I'm just a little worried that they may go dormant before I actually enjoy the flowers. But we'll plant them, we'll see. If I don't enjoy them this year, that's okay. I will probably enjoy them next year, late spring. Next, I have hellebore. Huge fan of hellebores because hellebores are very winter hardy. They have evergreen foliage and they bloom between winter and spring when there's nothing else happening outside. And I always say this, but it's nice to have something pretty in the garden over winter. Even if you're not actively gardening, it's nice to have something pretty to look at, even if it's just through the window. And hellebores are perfect for that, for all the reasons I just mentioned. So I always wanted to add more hellebores to my garden, but here where I live, they usually just sell those classic white hellebores. So I've been searching for some more unique varieties, and I found some really beautiful ones on Dutch Grown's website. I have hellebores double Ellen pink, beautiful large double pink flowers. So this obviously is not summer flowering, it's winter flowering, but we are going to plant it now, and hopefully we can enjoy some flowers this winter already. And I think I have 2. Yes, I have 2 hellebores. Next we have a hosta. Again, huge fan of hostas. Hostas are shade garden classics. I have 3 varieties in my garden. This one is hosta hands up, and I think this one is so unique looking. It's fairly small, so it's perfect for small gardens, for small balconies. And what is so special about this one is, first of all, the leaves are facing upwards, and they are also twisted, which gives that very unique look. Dark green foliage with this kind of creamy or white margins and beautiful purple flowers in summer. So a really beautiful variety that I'm excited to plant in my garden. And next and last, we have dahlias. Well, dahlias are definitely not a shade garden plant, but I've been very stubborn for the past couple of years trying to grow dahlias at any price because I'm a huge fan of dahlias. And you know, my garden receives a little bit of sunlight. It receives between 0 and 4 hours of sunlight. The closer to the railings you go, the more sunlight the plants can get. So I always place my dahlias strategically very close to the railings so they can get as much sunlight as possible. And I've tried different varieties, different types of dahlias over the years. And I noticed that those dahlias that have more simple single flowers, they tend to do quite okay. Other types of dahlias don't really bloom that well, but the single flower dahlias, simple flower dahlias, they can actually produce a couple of flowers even in a shady or partially shady garden. So I have one dahlia that I kept from last year, Dahlia famoso, and this year I'm going to be adding Dahlia Gallery Monet, which is a beautiful variety that only grows 30 to 40 centimeters in height. So that's perfect again for small balconies, for windowsills. All right, so that's for the Dutch grown, and now I have also a couple of bulbs that I picked at the grocery store, of all places. We have Ornithogalum. Again, a beautiful plant that I've not tried in my garden. I'm not sure if this is the best idea for a very windy garden like mine. Today, luckily, it's not windy, but most of the time it's very windy in here. Wind gusts up to 100 kilometers per hour. So very tall plants, you know, they are more fragile in those kind of windy situations. So this one grows up to 1 meter in height, so probably will need staking. But Ornithogalum, common name, the Star of Bethlehem, because they have these beautiful kind of star-shaped flowers. They produce clusters of flowers on top of those very tall bloom stalks. So we'll see how that goes. They do prefer full sun, but they can handle light shade. And last but not least, we have spider lily. So the botanical name is Hymenocallis Zwanenberg. That's the name of the variety. I think that's such a unique look. Also a little, you know, on the taller side, I would say, 80 centimeters in height. So we will see how that goes in partial shade, especially on the windy terrace. Alright, so the bare root perennials have to soak for about 20 to 30 minutes before planting to rehydrate the roots. And something that I added to this water is Super Thrive. It's one of my recent favorite products. It helps with the transplant shock, it helps to grow healthy new root system, helps your plant establish. And they actually recommend, at the back you can see, they recommend to add it to the water when you are soaking your bare root plants, about 1 milliliter per 3 liters of water. So that's what I did. I added a little bit of this to the water where I'm going to be soaking my perennials. So while these soak, we are going to plant the bulbs and tubers. Alright, so this is how it looks. Here is our hellebore, here's our hosta, and the 3 tiny things here, this is the shooting star. They are teeny tiny, so I kind of anchored them on the hosta roots. Okay, we are gonna start with the calla lilies. I place mesh hole pads at the bottom of each pot on top of the drainage hole, so this allows the water to evacuate but prevents soil from coming out of the pots. Now I'm gonna personalize, customize my potting mix a little bit. You could just plant everything in a multi-purpose potting mix. That would work well for all the summer flowering bulbs, for perennials, that works too. But if you're gonna just go, you know, simple and use a multi-purpose potting mix, use one that's good quality, something like light mix with added perlite, or a multi-purpose potting mix that has a little bit of organic matter incorporated with it, not just the cheap random universal potting mix from the garden center. These are usually very poor quality. They just don't hold on to any moisture, they dry out rapidly, they compact rapidly. So choose a good quality multi-purpose potting mix, something like light mix. I personally am gonna mix a good quality light mix with a little bit of organic matter and just a few handfuls of garden soil to make that potting soil a little bit more rich, a little bit more water retentive, because calla lilies like the soil to be slightly moist. So here it is, light, airy, very porous, but still holds on to some moisture, and we even have an earthworm that will help us with the soil aeration. This is how it looks. We want to plant calla lilies very close to the surface. They do not like to be buried too deep, just below the soil level. And you can clearly see this flat part, obviously is the bottom, and here you can see already the calla lily starting to sprout, so these pointy parts obviously need to face upwards. Alright, calla lilies are planted, we will water everything at the end. Alright, so now we are gonna plant dahlia. Here I have my dahlia from last year, and I'm so happy it survived because, as I mentioned, the winter this year was exceptionally cold and it was very wet as well. So the temperatures dropped to minus 10 degrees Celsius. The soil was frozen for really long periods of time, and I was sure that this dahlia did not make it. But to my surprise, I can see some new fresh growth starting to emerge, so I'm super happy. So as you can see, I'm lifting it off the floor so that it can catch as much morning sunlight as possible. So because this one is slightly taller and it's also in a larger container because it's a little bit bigger because I've kept it from last year. So this new dahlia, I think this container should be large enough because it's a dwarf type dahlia, as I said, only 30 to 40 centimeters in height. So we are gonna make a swap here. We'll place this larger dahlia behind and this smaller dahlia up front. So dahlias, they like the soil to be slightly acidic, so you can add a little bit of ericaceous soil or a little bit of ericaceous compost, mix it with the multi-purpose potting mix, and that'll be great. So I'm reusing potting soil from last year. I already mentioned I don't always use fresh soil all the time. I reuse the soil that I already have in my containers, just add a little bit of fresh compost or fresh multi-purpose potting mix, and it works really well. As you can see, it's still very nice and fluffy. So dahlias need to be planted about 5 centimeters below the soil surface. Obviously the tubers facing down, the new fresh growth facing upwards. But let's clean it up a little bit. Let's get rid of all of those dead and dry parts here. While we are here, I'm also going to plant the ornithogalum, the Star of Bethlehem. Over here, I think it will look pretty with my dahlias. We have 3 really nice sized bulbs that I'm going to plant about 10 centimeters below the soil surface. Alright, so I have this one bulb left to plant, 3 bulbs, and I'm wondering where to plant it. I think I want it somewhere around the bench here, maybe not here because I think that will look maybe a little awkward to have one tall plant here, but maybe on the other side next to the clematis. Alright, so I'm thinking maybe it's a little bit too crowded over here, like this container is way too close to this one and maybe I will not have enough room, to walk. The balcony is very narrow, it's only about 1.3 meters wide, so it's always gonna be narrow no matter what. Even if it's empty, it's still narrow, but you know what I mean. I think I'm just gonna plant it, and if I feel like it's a little bit too tight of a squeeze in here, I'm gonna move this container somewhere else, or I can just, I don't have anything in this one at this moment, so I can always, take this one out and place this one more over here. We'll see how that goes. And we're gonna place them about 10 centimeters deep. I have 3 bulbs, but they already started to multiply, so that's awesome. Alright, our bare-root perennials have been soaking for a while now. It's time to plant them, so why don't we start with that beautiful hosta. Alright, so with summer bulbs and tubers, we want the potting mix to be very lightweight, very airy, that allows water and oxygen to pass through easily, because we don't want those bulbs and tubers to rot. So I usually go for something like 75% multi-purpose potting mix, and then 25% of those additions, that maybe a little bit of garden soil, maybe a little bit of organic matter, but 75% is multi-purpose potting mix. Now with perennial plants, these are gonna live in your garden for many years. They need slightly more heavy, slightly richer soil. So I personally like to go with 50% multi-purpose and then 25% garden soil, 25% organic matter, so that it holds on to more moisture, it holds on to more nutrients. to make sure that these perennials grow healthy for many years to come. So here we have the hosta, beautiful root system as you can see. So I'm gonna try to make enough room in my pot for all that beautiful root system, and I'm gonna be planting the hosta where that top growth is above the soil level, so that the crown of the plant is just either a little bit below the soil level or just equal, you know, with the soil level, so that that top growth is already slightly visible. And I did the exact same thing with the hellebore. Now, as you can see, I don't really mulch my freshly planted plants. I like to see that new fresh growth, and then once the plant is a little bit more established, that's when I start to mulch. I also like to control, you know, the soil moisture when I'm not sure yet. I like to see the soil, and I like to be able to stick my finger into the soil to see if the plant needs a little bit more water. Okay, and last but not least, our teeny tiny but so beautiful shooting stars. So I think I need to add a little bit more soil, because these poor things will get lost in this pot. Right. Alright you guys, now I just have to water everything, but this is going to be the end of today's planting video. I hope that you found some inspiration or some helpful tips in today's episode. If you did, I would appreciate if you could leave this video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more container gardening content. Thanks so much for spending some time in the garden with me today. I hope you have a beautiful day, and we'll see each other again in the next video.